I'm here with Rob Mack. Welcome, Rob, to the Worth the Fight podcast. Rob's a good friend of mine here in South Beach. We met at Anatomy, and it's great to have you on the podcast here.
Thanks for having me, brother.
Of course, of course. So what, you're a happiness coach. Let's dive in. What are the secrets to happiness?
That's what I wrote the book for.
And you're happy. You're genuinely happy.
Yes.
You're genuinely strong. You crush the gym. You're there early in the morning every day. I've never seen you in a bad mood, and I'm sure you have your days. We all do, but you got such a strong mental health and expression, and I'm excited to illuminate this for our listeners.
I so appreciate you saying that, brother. Seriously, especially coming from you. It's kind of ironic because I was the least happy kid I think I ever knew. I mean, I grew up in a beautiful, loving family, pretty stressful at times, like anybody's family. And I always thought I'd grow out of that over time. I just thought I'm going to become a professional basketball player one day, and that'll solve all my problems. That was kind of my childhood dream. But as I got older, I just became more and more anxious and self-loathing, self-critical. And I just continued to spiral into like a deep, dark depression. And, that depression got so bad, I started experiencing like suicidal ideation every day, like dozens and dozens of times a day. And that went on for years and years. And I just, thought, man, if I could just make this one or two dreams come true, I'll have a beautiful girlfriend, I'll make a lot of money, I'll have friends, and the happiness will just go away. And while I didn't become a professional basketball player, a lot of my other dreams and desires were realized, but it didn't solve the happiness thing. And so I got to a place in my life where I decided to do a little research, and I decided I was going to slash my wrist. I still have the suicide test marks there on my wrist. And I just had the most unexpected, unpredictable experience at that moment. I felt such joy and such peace, and even this all-consuming love, the kind of which I had never experienced before. And so I was really confused by that, right? Like at that moment, you don't expect to experience those feelings in particular. So I decided I was going to postpone suicide for I think at that time it was like 10 minutes. I want to put it off for 10 minutes, And now it's sort of laughable, only because 10 minutes doesn't seem like a very long time. But it was just long enough for me to begin doing a different kind of research. I started researching instead of, just thinking the same thoughts over and over again, being to research what makes for a happy life, what is depression, what really is happiness. And I discovered this whole world, and folks that were dedicated to not only being truly, deeply, unconditionally happy themselves, but also spreading that to the world. So it took me a long time to dig out of that hole, but eventually I stopped experiencing the suicidal ideation, and I just found myself, happier and happier over time. And I got to a place where I said, if I can ever be truly unconditionally happy, I'm going to do everything I can to help other people who are in a similar position. And so that's what I do now.
Powerful, powerful. Thank you for the vulnerability and for the open share. And it sounds as though that moment, kind of like a white light moment when you're thinking of suicide, you're thinking of leaving, and to feel so much, it's kind of a strange notion that you would feel so much joy, but I'm feeling good right now.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to put this off, and then, to maybe get clear, maybe that's your higher self having an emergence of like, hey, you got this one life, live it,
right.
Live it fully.
That's right.
And, don't check out and leave now. That's Geez, right. Man, you got, it's going to get really, really good.
Yeah.
But for you to have that experience and be able to transmute it and to work through it, and then to want to understand that, so you could share it, you could pay it forward, knowing that we're in a mental health crisis, and I don't know when this happened. Was this before
Mid-20s.
or after your positive? I know you have positive psychology.
So it was way before that.
Okay.
I didn't know anything about positive psychology.
Okay.
Certainly not by name. It wasn't. I don't think it was even. It hadn't even been created yet, really.
Okay. Maybe the infancy stages.
Yes.
Kind of late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And what's wild is I was depressed at like 6 or 7 years of age. I can remember that. Very, and it just lasted through my mid-20s. And you're right. I was just driven to understand what was going on within myself and to understand why I would experience happiness at the lowest point in my life, seemingly. If you would have asked my younger self, if I could have seen what I'm experiencing now, like if I would have, my younger self would have never imagined or fathomed that I would become a happiness coach, and that all of the incredible things that have happened to me in my life would have happened. I've had a really blessed, beautiful, wonderful, like charmed life in lots of ways. And I've also experienced the depths of despair and depression. And I think that makes for a very rich life.
Yeah, full spectrum.
Yeah.
Contrast.
Mm-hmm.
The darkness teaches, and then it teaches us gratitude.
Oh, that's right.
And so you've been there. You've had the tough times. You're in the spirit of gratitude now. You know that. I think everybody that's been through hard times know, like, shit could go sideways. It could go sideways
at any moment, anytime, for any reason.
Yeah. So being in that spirit of gratitude, and that'll, like, paradoxically keep things, humble and good, and we show up, and we're consistent, and we're kind, and we have enriching relationships, etc.
And you nailed it. I mean, it's the contrast of life that makes it so beautiful. Challenging, yes, also beautiful. And the sweet wouldn't be nearly as sweet without the bitter, right? That being said, I'm a big proponent and fan of not suffering your way to happiness. I think a lot of us have these misconceptions around happiness. I understand them, but like, no pain, no gain. You've got to suffer your way to happiness. The price of success is unhappiness. All these kinds of ideas that we kind of pick up and inherit, and then we swallow, hook, line, and sinker, without really investigating any of those beliefs. And they become limiting over time, right? So that conditioning, that programming is something that, I spent a lot of time really exploring and doing my best, on one hand, to undo. You never get to the bottom of it. It's bottomless in a way. But that's why I do the work that I do. It's to help people get back to recognizing and realizing that their true nature is truly peace, love, and happiness.
Beautiful, powerful. So you do that through one-on-one coaching?
Yeah, that's right. So I do one-on-one coaching, although I'm increasingly scaling out of that. I do a lot of group work, corporate talks and public talks. I also do TV. So, there's, over the years, I've done a show on E for 2 years. I did a show on OWN for a year. I've done a show on Apple TV and Hulu. It's a morning show. But really the through line is always like, how can we live the best, happiest, and even most successful life possible? And that's where positive psychology plays such a key role, because there's probably about 2.5 decades of time-tested, face-valid, robust science that speaks to how you can live your happiest life, but also your most successful life, without the pain, stress, struggle, and strain that you're so used to.
Yeah, powerful,
Yeah.
powerful. Yeah, this idea that how things take so long to become part of our collective.
That's right.
And, the positive psychology, I think Marty Seligman in the late 90s, if I remember from
good memory, brother. Yeah,
reference him in all the books. And I know that he was at Penn too, right?
That's right.
You might have had classes with him.
Yeah, he taught the program.
Like, wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, it's like the godfather.
The godfather of positive psychology. Yeah. You had the opportunity to learn from. That's right. Incredible.
And what's interesting about that is that, he, really focused his career in the beginning. It was a lot on, business as usual psychology. And business as usual psychology is extraordinarily helpful and very informative. And it's all about focusing on what's wrong with people, right? Mental illness, weakness. And that's important to sort of offer remedies and panaceas in that respect. And then you get to a place where you realize that you can do all that great work there. And we would expect that you'd get like a happy, healthy, thriving individual, but he discovered that you didn't. You get a flatliner, somebody who's just getting through. It's like, to be well-adjusted to a sick society still makes you sick in a way. And so he said, well, psychology is great. And also it's a little lopsided. It's focused so much on, quote unquote, the negative, what's going wrong with people. We need to find a better balance there. So that's where positive psychology grew out of.
Powerful, powerful. That brings up one of my favorite books, Stealing Fire, written by Stephen Kotler. They reference Marty Seligman, and apparently his daughter was 8 or something, and she took a stand to his grumpiness. And so he had a light bulb moment with his daughter, like why am I being such a grump? This little kid is like mirroring to me where I'm missing them, and then I think that's where his investigation started. And of course, children can be such powerful mirrors, and they're in this unbridled joy, and but for him to have that experience that I think catalyzed a lot of the positive psychology movement,
Well,
if I remember correctly.
so you remember accurately, perfectly. I mean, he's a self-proclaimed curmudgeon. He said that in class often. And to your point, kids they really are often bundles of joy. I mean, there's an innate, inherent, intrinsic happiness within all of us, and peace within all of us, and a love within all of us. And you experience life, and sometimes things get concealed, right? You don't get to reveal that peace, love, and happiness all the time. And I love that it's a little 8-year-old, his daughter, that helps him see and discover that inner light, that invincible summer within, that we all have within us, but we're not always aware of, right? And so at the end of the day, that's for me what psychology psychology is really about. Psychology is the study of the psyche. The psyche really means soul. Now, psychology mostly focuses on your mind, right, and behavior, and that's extraordinarily helpful, but it's also partly limited because the peace, love, and happiness that I experienced in that suicidal moment, and I've experienced since, is a peace, love, and happiness that passeth understanding. Right? Understanding can help you get to the very brink of peace, love, and joy, but it doesn't let you experience it like full throttle in the way that a quiet mind does. It's amazing. And that's where kids really shine. They're, tapped in, tuned in, turned on, and they're present. They're deeply present. I mean, even kids will fight with each other, and 5 minutes later, they're best friends again. They're not ruminating. They're not sitting in it, and they're not, replaying, reliving, or even pre-living too many moments. They're in the present. So kids are great that way, and it's amazing. You can find sages everywhere if you're paying attention.
Powerful. So how do you keep the stillness? What practices that you do, or how do you? Again, I see somebody who shows up every day. You're early at the gym. You're crushing it. Social. One of the strongest guys at the gym. What are your?
Tell me more, bro. More, bro. What else you got?
What are your strategies? What are your strategies? Like we talked about before we started filming. Like, we're in a mental health crisis. People are struggling. People are hurting. People are, this idea of like doing hard things.
Yeah.
Which it's hard. It's hard showing up at the gym.
Yeah.
But I think, like, paradoxically, doing hard things makes our life easy, but doesn't really help someone when they're like stuck.
Yeah.
So how do we? Yeah.
So first of all, I want to say thank you. I received that fully from you. That's the highest praise, man. It really is, because you are that consistently, day in and day out, Matt. And I've seen you, and I've known you go through some really, really challenging things that would have knocked anybody else on their ass. So thank you for saying that. And I mean that particularly from you. So that's the first thing. What I do now looks significantly different than what I did in the beginning. Okay. In the beginning, it was mostly reading and consuming as much of other people's thoughts and ideas about happiness as humanly possible. I knew that if I left myself, like if I was left to my own default setting, which was rumination, which was self-criticism, self-judgment, and pessimism and skepticism, if I was left to that, I was screwed. And I was having a hard time rewiring that on my own. So I was like, well, I'm just going to listen to and read as many authors, teachers on this happiness thing as possible until their thoughts and their ideas become mine. Like I just want to, right?
Love that.
Yeah, I just want to
programs.
Yes,
they program.
That's
books
right.
are programs. TV documentaries are programs, and they program us.
That's right, exactly. I would drown myself in it. I mean, I literally would listen to it at night. I listened to it in the car. I'm sure I drove many girlfriends away just because I was like, I'm playing this. I'm sorry, it's where I'm at.
He's always listening to the same book.
Exactly.
I did the same thing over. I did the
you?
same thing too.
Yeah. It's so extraordinarily helpful. Like, and you have to do it sometimes when you don't want to do it. I would sometimes be so annoyed with hearing that person talk about happiness or peace, or that I would just turn it at a level that was like almost subliminal. And I think that was actually kind of effective. So that's where I started. And then over time, by listening, what I would do is I would just track what they were telling me to do. And I kept a little journal, and I would just pay attention to what I was trying and what was working or not working, or what felt right for me and what didn't. And so that actually eventually became happiness from the inside out. But I have since then sort of broken it down to 4 steps along the journey. It's a progressive kind of thing. So in the beginning, it was mostly about happy activities. Just, there are things in your life already that, even if they don't make you happy, they certainly don't make you unhappy. You enjoy them more than other things. Ideally, they're healthy things that don't have too many side effects. But I just started listing out my happiness islands, things that I like and enjoy for their own sake, not for what they get me, right? It's for their own sake. They're intrinsically rewarding. And I just tried to schedule more of those into my life. And I also identified the opposite of those. And that's where usually people are much more cognizant usually of the pain than they are the pleasure. And those are happiness deserts. So I would just identify actions, activities that made me miserable, that I hated, that I didn't want to touch or do. And I tried to do everything to get those things off my plate, right? So I would like reduce or eliminate, outsource, delegate, automate, regulate, or innovate. In other words, how can I get these things off my plate? So that was the first step. But then I discovered like there's lots of activities that I think make me happy on some days, but other days they didn't make me happy. So I began to see through that, like, maybe it's not just about the activity, it's also about the people. So then I started doing the same thing with people. Energy vampires, I just tried to spend less time with them. The folks that were uplifters and encouragers, I spent more time with those folks. And then I got to a place where, I think most people probably are, where they recognize that where the rubber hits the road is thinking. So happy thoughts. So it's like, okay, sometimes I can be with this super dope person. I can be with Matt. We're having a great time. We're at the gym. We're doing something fun. We're out going for a stroll, having coffee, great conversation. I can still be miserable or at least feel like this low level anxiety underneath. And I didn't love that. I was like, I'm still not getting it quite right. So then I recognized I need to take better control of my mind and I need to vet thoughts not only and primarily, and certainly not exclusively, based on whether or not they're true. There are a lot of things that are true that suck, or true that hurt, or true that you can't control. Not very useful. It had to be true and better feeling. So how can I vet conversations with myself and others? How can I vet my own thoughts based on whether or not they're true and better feeling? So I learned to tell better feeling stories based in truth about everything simply to feel better, right? So the through line here, the primary through line was like, I was prioritizing happiness above everybody and everything else, right? That was my primary goal. And what helped a lot was when I discovered positive psychology, what it said was, we all try to do all these things. We'll call them successful things. We try to be successful in so many areas, in our romantic lives, or social lives, our financial lives, professional lives, with our bodies. And we assume that that's going to make us happy. We're convinced of it. And sometimes, even intellectually, we're like, well, we know that's not exactly true. But if you look at your lives, if we look at most of our lives, we'll notice that we spend about probably 90% of our life chasing success in an effort to feel happier for it. And what positive psychology said is that's backwards. That's not going to work. In fact, that consistently doesn't work. The relationship is exactly the opposite of that. If you can find a way to get happy without all the stuff you want, without the desires being fulfilled, not only are you happy, which is the whole point of the whole thing. I mean, what's the point of being successful if you're miserable? I mean, if you're successful, you're not fulfilled. I call that failure. That's the biggest failure.
The success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure.
Yeah.
That's Tony Robbins.
There you go.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Beautifully said. So, you can have happiness and have nothing, and it feels like you got everything. You can not have happiness and have everything, and it feels like you got nothing, right? So once I discovered that I had this relationship sort of backwards, and I needed to prioritize happiness, not only to feel better, but also to do better so that life would go better, that was a game changer for me. Now, don't get me wrong, I questioned it a lot because I was like, look at all these successful people. They don't seem very happy. So how did they get there? There's ways to be successful without being happy, for sure. And there's also ways to be happy and not necessarily be successful in a worldly way. But once I leaned into that, focused on the happy activities, happy people, these loving people, encouragers, then happy thoughts, truthful, better feeling stories is probably the way I put it. I eventually came to recognize that even with my most positive, but authentically truthful thinking, I still felt like not quite fulfilled, not quite. And then that's where I discovered happy no thoughts. Right? So the idea there is it's so much easier than we think, literally. It's easier than you think, meaning that when your mind is quiet, it's already there. It's right there under the surface. But most of us run so quickly past those quiet moments in our brain, in our mind, that we miss it. We don't think much of it. And when we meditate, all these practices, prayer and meditation, and even running, things like that naturally quiet our minds, we project that happiness that we feel, the flow state that we feel, we project it to something else, right? We project it onto somebody else. So when it was running for me, I was like, oh, it's just running that's doing it for me. I love running and it gives me some endorphin hit. But later I discovered, no. every activity, every experience that I have, when I feel what I'd call happiness, peaceful aliveness, the way I describe it, peaceful aliveness, it's a quiet mind that's letting the innate, intrinsic, and inherent happiness within me be unveiled. It's an unveiling. It's not a creating. It's an unveiling of that invincible summer within. It's it's pulling back the blinds and letting the sun shine in, right? So once I discovered that was a game changer. I was like, wow, I can still do happy stuff. I can still spend time with great people, but I don't need any of those things in order to feel the peace, love, and happiness that I am.
Mm-hmm. And how do you, I want to make sure I'm following
Yeah.
There's so much goodness to unpack there. So basically what I'm hearing is that happiness is our essence.
Mm.
And, when you're not talking about meditation, you're not talking about breath work, you're not talking about exercise, all these things help, of course, but how do you frame I think you called it no thoughts happiness?
Yes.
Like what does that look like to you?
Great call.
Yeah.
So in the beginning,
how do you practice it?
Yeah. In the beginning, it was just identifying activities that let me feel that peaceful aliveness or happiness. Let's call it flow state.
Okay.
Right? Flow state, psychologically, it's a loss of time consciousness, a loss of self-consciousness. You're so tapped in, tuned in, turned on, and absorbed and consumed with what you're doing that you don't spend a lot of time, energy, or interest in noticing how you're doing. You're just enjoying yourself, and you also just happen to be hitting threes. You can't miss. You can't miss. And everybody's had that moment in their lives, whether it's gardening or basketball or something else. So you want to identify those activities and just spend more time on those activities, okay? And that will just let you know it's possible to experience this on demand. You don't do it every time, right? You don't not flow state every time, even if you try hard. So that's the first place to start. But then what I started doing was what I discovered was that if you're multitasking, for instance, that's one way to prevent yourself from being in the zone, flow state, happiness. And so unitasking was where I started. So I said, okay, when I'm cleaning, I'm just cleaning. When I'm eating, I'm just eating. When I'm walking, I'm just walking. I'm not also thinking. I'm certainly not also on the phone. That doesn't mean that I don't occasionally do it, but that was the idea. The idea was, can I do one thing at a time, remembering that thinking counts as one thing? So when thoughts occur to you, you're in the shower, let's say, instead of just enjoying your body and the water and the steam and the soap, you're also thinking about tomorrow and yesterday. And you're thinking about what you need to do or what you should have done or what you did. It's all these things, right? So it's like these thoughts come up, you let them go, and you come back to experiencing your body, just body awareness. So it's being less interested in the explanations and thoughts in your brain and more interested in the experience, sensations, and perceptions in your body. That's the easiest place to start. But that's why people love great food. They love great sex. They love drugs, because it's an opportunity, an invitation for you to experience presence, deep presence, right? Over time, I learned that I didn't even need to do that. That focusing on the body is helpful because it brings your mind to a single focus, allows you to be deeply present. But there's a deeper level where instead of noticing the sensations, perceptions that you're experiencing, you just try to feel into the peaceful aliveness in your body already. So even now, you can feel inside your hands life. There's life. There's a vibrating energy inside your hands, in your stomach, in your legs. You can feel that in a more sort of Gestalt way by just noticing that there's life inside me. At first, it feels like nothing. Like literally, I remember reading about this or hearing about this and kind of practicing it. And like, it's not happiness. Okay, I'm alive. But the more time I spent enjoying just that, no matter what else I was doing, be in line somewhere, I could be in conversation with you, I would just, as often as I could, bring my awareness back to feeling into my own beingness, my own essence. It was like a dimmer switch that just got dialed up higher and higher on this halogen lamp that was happiness, right? And then before long, the happiness and peaceful aliveness that most of us feel occasionally in fleeting, fading ways throughout your day or your life, it moved from the background of my experience to the foreground of my experience. So it wasn't something I had to work so hard at. So like you said earlier so beautifully, it feels hard in the beginning, but it makes everything else easier in the end. It makes happiness easier, success easier. It makes working out easier. It makes everything easier because you always have this sort of place to retreat to that is problem-free, pensive-free, and full of peace.
Powerful. Yeah, I'm hearing that the journey, you know, and I map what you're saying to my journey as well. Like it takes time, and there's deep study. You shared an enormous amount of study, and you know, grabbing data points and opening your mind, opening your heart. Reading about people that have maybe transcended similar challenges that you've gone through or struggled with, et cetera. And so they're mapping this terrain, and then we're embracing the OOG of the day to day of this really nuanced practice of body awareness that you're describing doesn't happen. We don't just snap our fingers and have that, but it's something that we cultivate over time. And the way that you're describing it kind of sounds like my meditation, and we might be talking about the same thing. And
I'm sure that we essentially are.
And I loved what you were saying about the happiness islands and just the contemplation. I beat this drum that the journaling is the most powerful integration strategy. I know that when I started kind of waking up and having healing experiences, I just wanted to keep writing. And then that ultimately morphed into a 308-page psychedelic integration book. And I was like, oh, I feel so good. I got to share this and I got to write. And oh my God, but I go through a journal once a month, and it's just how I process the heaviness in my mind, how I process what's on my heart, and to put words onto paper and to work through. And I think that objectively we see things differently when we put things onto paper. We can see sometimes that we're ruminating on, that's not that big of a deal. Why am I giving so much attention to that? It's almost like we can't see that unless we put it on paper. Then it becomes real. Then it becomes then we maybe have some distance. We actually have distance. Yeah. It's not in our head. It's on paper.
That's right.
And then we can start to work through that.
You nailed it. So in what you described, in a nutshell, is therapy, is meditation, is prayer. I mean, it's the essence of all practices, which essentially is, I have a friend, and we always joke and say, if you can see the crazy, you're not the crazy, right? So the idea is, if you can see it, it's not you. So if you can see your thoughts, just like clouds, just notice them. You can just see them. You can hear them, kind of like music playing on the radio. As soon as you have that recognition, you're already like halfway home, right? Now, of course, in the end, you discover you were always home. You were just dreaming you were somewhere else. But we have to make these concessions to the language. It's hard to explain these, because ultimately what we're talking about is something very ineffable. It sounds complicated. It sounds nuanced. At the end of the day, we're talking about just the bare, naked awareness that you're alive, that you exist, full stop, no thoughts, no judgment, no color commentary around it. That's why little kids are better at it. That's why very simple-minded people are better at it. I remember one time when I was in 5th grade, and boy, I was awkward. And I was a good student because I was scared of my dad. He's a disciplinarian. And the special ed teacher came down and asked me to be like her assistant. And now the special ed teacher was very cute. I thought, I'm 5th grade, so what do I know? And I went down there, and I had no idea why she asked me. And I remember feeling at first so sorry for these kids that had special challenges that I had never had in my life, And then I discovered something very quickly. These kids were so much happier than me. They were so much happier than me. And part of the reason they were happier is that, one, they just lived in the moment. 2, they didn't relive and pre-live many moments at all. And they weren't constantly lost in obsessive compulsive thinking. It was just that simple. Now, it took me a lot of time to come back to that recognition. But at that time, I knew, no, happiness is so much easier than I'm making it out to be. It's not this, but it takes us time, to your point, to get to a place where we discover that what we've been looking for is buried in our own backyard the whole time, kind of thing, right? So that's why meditation is so fantastic. That's why prayer is so fantastic. That's why, all these other practices that journaling is fantastic, is because you suddenly come to a recognition that you are not your mind. You are not your body. You're that which is aware of these things. And if you can be aware that you're that awareness, that in of itself is already all the happiness you could possibly enjoy for this lifetime and many lifetimes after that, right? So, and we've all had that experience. We've all had an experience one time where you experience an orgasm. You eat some delicious food. You go on a roller coaster ride. you have something scary happen. Your mind goes completely quiet, but you feel relief the second it's all over. Why do you feel relief? You think it's because you realize this desire or you had this exciting thing happen. But the truth is, uh, happiness ultimately isn't the recognition or realization of a desire. It's to a large extent the forgetting of it. The forgetting of it. Meaning that it's our mind that builds up this whole story about what will happen when I finally get to this thing. And you finally get to this thing, the girl, the guy, you hit the drug, whatever it is. And what happens in that final moment is that you finally let go of all this stress and anxiety and all this striving to get this thing. And finally your mind is quiet for a micro moment or 2 micro moments or a day. Boy, it feels amazing. Is it the car? Is it like the toy? No, if it was, it would make you happy forever. But it doesn't. I mean, if getting what we wanted made us happy, we'd all be happy already. I mean, look at how many things that we all have that if we didn't have, we'd be praying for so desperately. So the challenge with most of us is that we always think that happiness is something that's out ahead of us. It's like a step away, or it's 5 days away, it's even 5 minutes away. But it's not, or that it requires a ton of work. Yes, it's helpful to develop and cultivate these practices. But all these practices really do is encourage you to let go of all these stumbling blocks and hurdles that you put in your own way to experiencing a quiet mind, So it's so easy that a child can do it.
Yeah. Powerful. The backyard,
Yeah.
is salient. It's already here. We already have it. This is bringing up, I know that we read The Science of Scaling together, and Time as a Tool, and Dr. Hardy's message is all about simplifying. We're simple, it's just really, we have all this complexity and complexity in our mind, and we're a human system as well. So we're just simplifying the basics and quieting our mind and just coming home to the truth of our being, the essence of our being that is happy before the BS Inc. maybe conditions it out of us. And then we have all of the pressures and stress, and we need to have this, and we need to have that in order to be happy. That was also I think it was from The Science of Scaling, or maybe 10x is easier than 2x, the notion that, like, Thomas Jefferson had it wrong. It's not like, he was life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It's like, no, we happiness is our true nature. That's right. But like, he'd set that intention for all of us a long time ago. We're like, hold on a second here. We've been working off of this playbook here where we're all pursuing happiness, when it's like, that's the truth of our being. It's our true nature.
Well, you nailed it. I mean, that notion of itself immediately sets us down a path that leads increasingly to unhappiness. It's kind of like you're a multi-billionaire and the money's buried in your backyard, and somebody tells you, boy, if you just continue to work really hard, you can go make that money out there. Just go down the street a little bit. And you go down the street and you can't find it there, so you go further away, and then you go further away, and you're like, maybe you got it wrong. Maybe it's not down the street. Maybe it's the next city. Maybe it's the next state. Wait, maybe it's in the next country, right? So you do this whole trip around the world only to realize, okay, it was there the whole time. Now, that trip is extraordinarily valuable because it makes you deeply grateful for the discovery that you have in the end. That's why you see these laughing Buddhists. They're laughing because it's kind of silly. Like, oh my God, I did all these things.
When it was buried in the backyard, then I could have just gone to the backyard. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's like chasing the horizon. And the challenge with the horizon is that you never get to the horizon. That is a mirage. You never get to the horizon. Doesn't matter if you're a king or a beggar, no matter how fast you paddle that boat, you will never get to the horizon. But that's the BS Inc. piece you're speaking about. I mean, it's hard to sell anybody anything if they're deeply, truly content already, happy already, right? And I'm not saying that folks are not well-intentioned, but when we're all caught up in this game of chasing the horizon, it can be challenging.
Which is Miami. We're
right.
Here. We got the beautiful backdrop.
Right.
It's Miami, the glitz and glamour. I've never seen more $400,000 cars here, and it's so ingrained. And it's like,
it's true.
I don't know, like, it's a nice car, but
right.
but I don't need to have that, and I'm happy just the way I am,
That's right.
And I know that you have that same kind of energy, and to not get like caught in the BS, in the current,
That's right.
perhaps. And to know that it's not going to come from the outside. It's going to come from showing up. It's going to come from serving our clients. It's going to come from feeling good in our body. It's going to come from a good lift. It's going to come from getting in the sauna, getting in the cold plunge. It's going to come from the special girl who lights us up, and we had the courage. And like we talked about from the get-go, like one of the first things, before we became friends, I remember, it was like Rob's at the gym approaching women, and I've been on an cold approaching journey, and that was something that really was highlighting. I was like, it takes courage to open yourself up to hey, I'm over here, and to get a number and get a date, but that was something I was like, oh man, he's got great energy, and I love to see that, and that's inspiring, because it's public potential rejection, humiliation. She could say no, she could laugh at you, and
that's a great point, and it underscores that earlier point that you made around the challenge and opportunity with the pursuit of happiness versus the happiness of pursuit, right? So I love nice stuff. I got a nice watch. I like my watch. I like nice stuff. And one of my favorite authors would always say, he had 99 Rolls Royces, and he'd say, oh, it's so much easier to meditate in the back of a Rolls Royce, trust me, than it is a public bus kind of thing. There's nothing wrong with pursuing anything and anyone in your life, right? Consensually, of course, right? And if you're happy already, then that pursuit isn't about getting to some end, but it's spreading that end all over the means, meaning that it's not a journey to success, it's a journey of success, right? And that's just as true, I think, especially with dating relationships. I think most of us, are under, a little spell that if we could just finally get the guy, finally get the girl, we finally get into that relationship, that we'll be happy. Most of us have lived long enough to be disabused of that idea. Like, there is no perfect person, there is no perfect situation, no perfect relationship. It's going to all come with its challenges. And if you do not bring happiness and peace and love with you into that experience, whether it's just asking a girl out or talking to her or into that relationship itself, I promise you, you are not going to find it there. You will not find it there. So there is, I think, happiness in pursuit. If you find the happiness within yourself. And then we know statistically, scientifically, that's a lot more attractive, right? Happy people are much more attractive than unhappy people.
Do you think the happiness can be a byproduct of pursuit? So we commit to pursuit. Pursuit is courage. Pursuit is embracing friction. Pursuit is doing the hard thing that makes us feel good. Like we always do, oh, whoa, my heart was beating. I felt like I was going to freaking die, but I went up and I asked for her number, or I told her that she was beautiful. And you can't lose either way. I mean, like, even if you don't, there's not a vibe or there's not an energy, if you give a compliment from your heart without any expectation, then boom, everybody wins.
That's right.
And do you think that happiness can be cultivated from that journey of committing to the pursuit, committing to showing up, committing to do hard things?
Yes. So what I would say is all of that contributes to the eventual recognition and realization that it was within you all along. So yes, I mean, I certainly would agree that participating in life full out is going to lead you to the awareness of the happiness that exists within you much more quickly and much more enjoyably than sitting back and only meditating all day, every day. Like, get out there, enjoy life. You're not meant to just sit there and meditate all day. So yes, I would say that for sure. Now, I think where the challenge comes in a little bit is that as soon as we frame something as difficult, we've already we've put a hurdle in our way already. So one of the concepts that I've embraced is this idea of blisscipline. Like, I was a very disciplined little kid. I clearly know that you were disciplined. I mean, you're a disciplined, very disciplined guy. And I love.
But I was.
No, you were as a kid
before.
Were you?
Yeah.
I can't see that way.
You're
so intentional.
Yeah.
As a kid, I was very disciplined. I was raised by, my dad was in the military. So we salute him, he bounced quarters off the bed, make sure it was tucked, made, well enough. And it was very adaptive. I made a lot of things happen. I was salutatorian in my high school class. I went to Ivy League schools, I was a model for 10 years, so a lot of great things happened as a result of me being very disciplined. I worked for a consulting firm and I was miserable still. And then I discovered this idea of blisscipline. I don't know if I read it somewhere or was downloaded directly to me. I don't know. But the idea was, how can I enjoy everything more, even the quote unquote hard stuff? Like, if I'm gonna go approach, let's say, a girl, or whatever it is that you want to do in your life, let's say dating. Yes, maybe you feel a lot of anxiety or stress and fear of rejection, but also, how can you enjoy the hell out of that experience in a way that isn't dependent on whether she says yes or no? I think so much of what we're talking about really is about non-attachment. It's like, can I still have fun even if nobody around me is having fun? Can I still feel good even if I get rejected? Can I still feel good even if I'm not making the amount of money that I want to make? So the idea is, how can I embrace discipline in a way that makes it a heck lot more fun? I kind of like to remind myself, and I remind my clients, that if it's not fun or you can't make it fun, try to do something else. Like, try to do something else, or try to do it a different way, right? So yeah, absolutely, Matt, I agree with you totally that doing hard things is great for resilience. It's great for grit, and great for building willpower. And those things will behoove you later in your life in all kinds of other areas of your life. They spread. What you do anywhere is kind of what you do everywhere. So agreed. And I would encourage people to be careful about the ideas we have around what we're doing. If immediately before we even start, we think it's hard, we've already set ourselves up for a hard experience. And you will see that your life plays that out. If you think it's a fun experience, an exciting experience, an interesting experience.
Or maybe, we shift the frame towards exhilarating.
Yeah.
Because that, I remember reading some psychology about that people perform a lot better when they don't think that they're anxious. When we have the mental frame that we're anxious, we're in our head. Exhilarating is human. We're alive.
That's right.
That's a good adaptive feeling that is.
That was my senior thesis, actually. It was on the illusion of control, right? So we took a group of participants and they were doing the same activity. We told some of them, this is a really hard, difficult test. And other people said, this is a fun, playful game. And then we noticed how they responded differently. If you can relax, almost everything goes better. Roger Bannister, the guy that broke the 4-minute mile, was asked, how did you do that? Like in an interview, how did you break the 4-minute mile? They thought people were going to die. If you run a mile.
I thought his heart would blow out of his chest.
Yeah. So to have an ambulance and police cars all waiting for him to die. And he said, the secret to running fast is to relax. Now, of course, he's talking about his body, but he's also mostly talking about his mind. The stories that we create become the lives that we live. Right. So the challenge is, how can I tell either a better feeling story or just drop the story? Do I need a story at all? Can I just enjoy my chocolate without overthinking? Can I just enjoy the sex without thinking about what's going to come next? Is he or she? Can I just enjoy everything without so much obsessive compulsive thought?
Powerful. Yeah. Powerful. Love that. Love the insights all the way around. Very nuanced conversation.
You get me gassed up, bro.
Detachment is a powerful notion that really stands out is not gripping so tightly. And that goes back to the flow state that you were talking about earlier. I think that's really important.
Yeah. It's easy to believe that how you feel depends on other people, places, or things, but it's always a lie.
Mm-hmm. Well, I appreciate your time here. I know that we wanted to talk a little bit about perhaps giving some encouragement to maybe that guy who is in bitterness, not betterness, and he's stuck, and he's not dating, and he's down the YouTube rabbit hole, and he's watching all these videos that are confirming all of his biases, and he's not approaching women, he's not moving closer, he's becoming more sequestered, more angry, more bitter, or maybe somebody who's struggling with mental health as a kind of a next step or encouragement, or does anything come to mind?
The first thing sounds like a spiritual platitude. We've all heard it and seen it, but I don't think it can be overemphasized, which is, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. You already know if you're not doing anything at all, you already know where that path will lead you. Exactly where you are. Yeah. That's cool. There's nothing wrong with that. The other thing I'd say is, we all just want to feel good, man. And we all have different approaches and paths to it. But if you can really prioritize feeling better where you are now, it could be the simplest thing, the smallest thing. Maybe your whole life sucks. Maybe it's all garbage. And there's just this one thing that you love. It's the view from your balcony, or it's this one book, or it's this one song. Like when I was feeling super depressed and suicidal, I would just find one thing and focus on it obsessively like a crazy person. I would just zone. I'm like, this is going to be my whole life. So it's kind of like if you live in heaven and there's a pothole on Main Street and you focus on that pothole, it becomes hell real quick. But if you live in hell and you're focused on the one thing, it's a water fountain in the corner, and you obsess about that one thing, all of a sudden it starts to spread and bleed into the rest of your life. So, I just want to tell people, you're justified in feeling bad about your life. You're justified and legitimate, and it's valid to feel awful about a lot of things. There's a lot of scary upsetting things happening in people's lives and in the world. There's no question about it. And you're only messing up your own life by doing that, right? Everybody's convinced if they just change somebody else or change something else, things will go better for them. That's just not the case. That's just not the way it works. Life will never be perfect. People will never behave according to your will. You have to take back control or realize that you've had power all along. And it doesn't take a lot. You don't have to have everything going right. You just need to focus on the one thing that makes you feel better when you focus on it. Do it long enough, it'll start to bleed into the other areas of your life. And before you know it, your whole life gets better. Like I didn't try to fix my whole life. There's no doing that. To this day, I don't try to fix my whole life. There's like 2 things I can control. I just control the 1 or 2 things. Most days I suck at that, but even that makes my whole life better, right? So I'd say that, you're doing better than you think you are. Find the 1 or 2 things in your life that you can feel just a little relief around. Focus on them until they start to bleed into the other areas of your life. And I promise you'll look back in a year or 10 years, or who knows, 10 minutes, and you'll be like, wow, you know what? My life is better than I thought it was.
Wow. Gratitude rings through. Gratitude and fear and uncertainty cannot coexist in the same moment.
Yeah.
And when we're focused on gratitude, it's really hokey and cheesy to say, but the blessings multiply.
That's right.
And we're focusing on these things, building around that, even if it means obsessional desire. I don't know. I've been there, and there was a time where I was like, oh man, this is it. This is the cat's meow. I'm gonna grip to this because I'm feeling good. Yeah. And then I'm gonna build upon that. And then the next thing you know, you got some momentum and we got more tools and more confidence and so on. So I love the way that you describe that.
That's a great, I just want to say one thing to that, because that's such a profound point, Matt. You always have these great insights, and I appreciate that so much about you, man, really. When I was trying to be grateful, I was having a hard time. I couldn't be grateful for big things like running water, like clean water, like shelter and clothing and stuff like that. You know what I mean? I really had trouble with that. And then it made me feel guilty. I was like, what's wrong with me? I don't feel gratitude about these big things that like half the world doesn't have at all. But I noticed I could feel some joy or just a little bit of maybe excitement or curiosity about boy, just seeing a beautiful woman for me was enough for my mind to go quiet. And I was like, wow, I feel so small and trivial and like even superficial. But the encouragement I'm offering is to not judge yourself. There are some things that make you feel a little relief or a little joy, and you might feel like it should be something bigger or different, but don't do that. Just if you enjoy the view, then enjoy the view. If it's like, a Big Mac, whatever it is, right? Just try to do exactly what you said, which is focus on gratitude, but try to make it authentic. If you fake it, it just doesn't work, and you're faking it. So you want it to be authentic.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, Worth the Fight is all about, we're shifting Worth the Fight, we're evolving into prosperity pathways. What is prosperity pathway? What does that mean to you?
It's
you're a prosperous man.
Yeah.
I see that in you, and I think that our values are very aligned. So I'd love to hear.
For me, it's living a rich life, and to live a rich life means that wherever I go, I feel at home. Like wherever I go, I feel abundant, and that doesn't mean that, have a ton of money, or it doesn't mean that I have, a big house or have all these cars and stuff. I mean, I have some nice stuff and I like my stuff. I don't have a lot of it though, So prosperity for me is happiness. And when I feel deeply happy, like tapped in, tuned in, turned on, boy, is life good, is life rich. And I have something that money cannot buy. The only reason I even have a psychology practice is because people who have exponentially more money than I have, than probably I will ever have, call me for something they can't purchase. If they're trying to purchase it through me, I can't even give it to them, right? I can lead them to there. I can encourage them. I can kind of give them tips, tricks, and tools, and I can give it to them faster and more easily and quickly than they can find on their own, or than anybody else can do it, because it's the only thing I know in my life. I don't know anything else. I suck at everything else but this one thing. So for me, it's happiness and it's peace, because those things can't be purchased with all the money in the world. And they lead you to increasing the other forms of abundance and prosperity in your life. And they do so effortlessly, right? So we know from positive psychology that when you're happy, you make more money, you save more money, you live longer, you live happy or healthier life during that time. You get married earlier, stay married longer, happier in all relationships, whether you're married or not. Your rating is more attractive by the opposite, by anybody who's really interested in you. And you're also just a kinder, more charitable person, right? So happiness makes you more prosperous. It makes you more abundant, but also it's the greatest form of prosperity and abundance.
Beautiful. Love it. It's been wonderful having this time with you,
Appreciate
Rob. You have your books here.
Yeah.
Please share. Where can people find them, and how do people work with you?
Yeah. So you can find me at Coach robmack.com. You can find me on most social media platforms, although I'm not super active. Most probably consistently Instagram at Rob Mack Official. And you can
We'll
find
put the links in the show notes.
Awesome.
Okay.
And you can find both my published books and the other books that will be released soon everywhere great books are sold, including Amazon and Barnes & Noble.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you so much again.
Appreciate you, brother.
Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you.